Okay, Sharon kids, here's your final breakdown for this school year. Remember, if you can, please try and say the sentences aloud instead of typing it so that you are getting all the benefits of repeating that word. So, the first word that we're going to do today will be aquatic. Let's say it 3 times. Aquatic, aquatic, aquatic. In a sentence, you might see phytoplankton are an important organism in all aquatic ecosystems. The definition of aquatic is growing or living in the water in this case. Some examples of aquatic ecosystems include wetlands, rivers and streams, lakes and ponds, aquifers and springs, estuaries and bays, and oceans. This is not an example. These are not all of the examples of the places where you might see the term aquatic. These are just the ecosystems that can be aquatic. Tricky parts about aquatic is that the word aqua sounds kind of similar. However, if you know anything about the color aqua, aqua is a blue. You know what else is blue? Water. So, once we move on to the it's your turn, please remember to use a complete sentence with your answer. You're using the word in context. You're actually using the vocabulary word in the sentence. If you don't use it, I can't give you credit for it. And secondary number two, please use a speech translator if you can, and then check the accuracy if possible. Here we go. Your turn. One type of aquatic ecosystem is a blank. Fill it in. Go. All right, moving on. I certainly hope that you used a complete sentence and the word. And I'm going to gear up to get 45 emails from kids who did not. Next word is salinity. Let's say it together. Salinity, salinity, salinity. In a sentence, you might see brackish water has a salinity that can change day to day. The definition of salinity is how much salt is in a body of water. That's why I picked salt for the picture. And since you generally cannot see salt in water as it has dissolved, I figured just salt would be a good picture. Coolio. Examples of different salinities. So the key differences are that salt water has approximately 3.5% water. The way that it's generally measured is not by percent, however. Most scientists use PPT, which stands for parts per thousand. So it's a little bit, well, you can see the way that you get from 3.5% to 35 parts per thousand is to just move the decimal over one more. So oceans tend to have 3.5% salt water around that area. That is the most amount of salt water. If you are in a lake or a pond, other freshwater sources, those are all about 5/100ths of a percent or half of a part per thousand of salt to each part of water. And estuaries and bays are really interesting areas because they can go anywhere from the salinity of a freshwater area to the salinity of a saltwater area overnight. Day to day, it can change. So you can only imagine how interesting the different organisms have to be to live in a place that has both super, super salty water some days and super, super fresh water other days. So it's your turn. I would rather drink water that has a high salinity, or would you rather drink water that has a low salinity? Complete sentence, use the word go. Alrighty, moving on. The next word is zooplankton. Let's say it together 3 times. Zooplankton, zooplankton, zooplankton. In a sentence, you might see some phytoplankton in an aquatic ecosystem will be consumed by zooplankton. Definition of zooplankton are a type of consumer that ranges from microscopic organisms to large species such as jellyfish that float in the water. This is a type of thing that floats in the water. What's so interesting is they can go anything from these tiny, tiny little organisms up to kind of bigger organisms as well. In my words, they're tiny floating animals. The last breakdown, we talked about phytoplankton, which were tiny microscopic plants in the water. So these are generally the things that will eat those tiny microscopic plants. However, some zooplankton may eat other zooplankton or other microscopic animals as well. So they can be either an herbivore, a carnivore, or an omnivore. The tricky parts about zooplankton is again that they're often confused with phytoplankton. And my trick to you, as stated last week, is that phytoplankton starts with a P, so does plants, whereas zooplankton starts with the word zoo, which is generally full of animals. Your turn. One example of a zooplankton is a blank. If you know one of your own, you're welcome to use that. However, I gave you some examples that I found, such as krill, jellyfish, a conger eel, or a segmented worm. So, what is one example of zooplankton? Go. All right, moving on. Next to source is the word terrestrial. Let's say it 3 times: terrestrial, terrestrial, terrestrial. You might see in a sentence, rainforests are a home to a variety of terrestrial plants. The definition of terrestrial is relating to earth or land. And this is a root word, terra, that you might see in a lot of different settings. Here are some examples of terrestrial ecosystems. You may see the taiga, the grasslands, the desert, the tundra, or a deciduous forest, or a tropical rainforest. Those are just some examples of terrestrial ecosystems. You're going to learn a lot more about those this week. Tricky parts about the word terrestrial, there's a similar word that says extraterrestrial. If you've ever heard of that word, you know it generally is referred to when we talk about aliens. And while that has the same root word, it does mean something different. Extraterrestrial means from outside of Earth, like an alien would be, whereas terrestrial generally just means Earth or things that have to do with Earth. All right, it's your turn. One type of terrestrial ecosystem is the fill it in now. Go. Alrighty. Next word is fertile. Let's say it together. Fertile, fertile, fertile. In a sentence, you might see, despite the fact that many plants live there, the soil in the tropical rainforest is not very fertile. Definition is producing or capable of producing abundant vegetation or crops. Vegetation basically means plants. So, big picture, it's a soil that is able to make a lot of plants. It's full of nutrients. It is your turn. You want the soil in your garden to be not fertile, or do you want the soil in your garden to be very fertile? Ready? Go. Same thing again. All right. Blastosaurus, I miss you guys so much. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. Bye.